Hello, hello, my friends. How are you doing? Happy Thursday morning. I hope your day is off to a good start. I hope you had a great week. I am excited to be here. You are at the bi monthly live for the Communication Blueprint. I am your host, Ashley Bright. We are streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube. For those of you that are new to this, the show is a companion to my bi-monthly newsletter that goes out to LinkedIn and Patreon. If you haven't seen it, if you're on LinkedIn, please subscribe. If you're interested in Patreon and you are on YouTube, the link is in there. If not, DM me. I will send you the link, no problem. So what is the point of all this? Well, I want you to be empowered, whether you're stepping on stage, whether you're getting into a meeting room, whether you're getting in front of a camera, just like this. I want you to have access to actionable strategies and insights so that you can move from a place of fear to a place of confidence and a place where you are using your words to actually create action from your listeners, from your audience, from your clients potentially. And I want as many people to know about this as possible so they can gain those valuable skills. So I would appreciate it if you could share this with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe and leave me a comment. I'd love to know what's resonating with you. So thank you in advance. Now, on our last show 2 weeks ago, we talked about mastering vocal foundations. A lot of critical things there. We talked about the fact that your voice, your mouth, that is your instrument, my friends, and that is what's connecting with people. And so today I want to go a little deeper on a very specific part of that vocal foundation. The topic of my latest newsletter, the power of the pause. So we're going to master the art of strategic silence. And I love that way of thinking about it, strategic silence, because really that's what that is all about, is using that pause strategically to create engagement, to do a whole bunch of really valuable things, because a well-placed pause will help emphasize key points, it will build anticipation, and it will make your message unforgettable. So with that, let's get into it. And a side note, as you can see, we're out of the studio today. We're outside. It's beautiful weather. I just could not resist. And so that's what we're doing today. And I hope we don't have any garbage trucks go by. The dog doesn't start barking. But, that's what happens when you are going live. That's what happens when you're outside. So we'll figure it all out. It'll all be good. There's the info there. If you want to join, follow, subscribe, all those good things, I would love that. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here. If you're out there listening, I have my notes. Someone asked me about these because sometimes you hear me in the background with the piece of paper rattling around and stuff. Well, this is it. See, these are sort of the draft, or the final draft, if you will, of the newsletter. And as you can see, it's had some life to it. It goes through the ringer. I spilled coffee on it yesterday. I spilled water on it this morning. It's a wonderful little kind of physical archive of the process. And I keep them all. It's funny because someone asked and I was like, all right, well, let me show you. So here they are. I keep all of them. There's one. It's a little, it doesn't have coffee on it, but you can see they get kind of marked up with my notes and other things. And anyway, enough about the behind the scenes process. Let's get into today's topic. Bear with me 1 second here while I get my papers sorted. Just as we jump in, if you have questions, if you've read the article, please let me know. If you have questions or comments, throw those in as well. I would love to get to those. That's kind of the whole point of this, is for me to share this info with you, for you to gain insights and knowledge and all that good stuff. And so with that, let's jump in. So today, the power of the pause, using strategic silence. What can I say? It's a powerful topic. It's going to allow you to have more impact in your messaging. It's going to allow things to resonate and things to be absorbed. And so today we're going to talk about kind of 4 key areas. We're going to talk about why the pause matters, how to use pauses more effectively in your communication, and how to apply that pause in different types of scenarios. And then we'll talk about some practice techniques to help you get more comfortable with leveraging the pause. Hey, I see a comment there. Thank you, Jesus. Good morning, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, I know you, Dr. Banal. I just put it together. I saw the profile picture. How are you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for joining me. That's what it's all about, bringing the community together and sharing ideas. Hopefully, the wind chimes going off in the background are not too much of a distraction. That's what happens when you're going live outside here. All right, so let's get into it. So strategic pauses. Now, I think many would agree out there that in our world today, it's all about sort of rapid pace. It's this hyper consumption of information. And I think many times, whether it's you're looking at the attention spans, you're looking at TikTok, you're looking at the way video works now, it's all very brief, very short. And so we get mixed up in thinking that, like, I got to say more, I've got to give more, I've got to really go at it. When in reality, one of the most powerful things, no surprise, I've been talking about this for a little while, is pausing. It's that silence. It's that moment in between what you're saying that really can be powerful. Hey there, my friend. I've got another guest joining. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning to you. So let's talk about why the pause matters. Well, there's a whole variety of reasons. I'm going to list my top 6. Oh, good. We got a dog in the background there that is chiming in with their thoughts. So number 1, it helps you emphasize your point. When you use that pause, it really helps put clarity and definition around the point you're trying to make. It can also, and this is really important because it can help with the absorption and understanding of information, which when you think about the listener, you think about the people that are connecting with you, whether it's on a live like this, whether it's in a meeting or a big audience in a stage setting. It's all about helping them absorb the information. So a pause or a series of pauses will really help with that. Another thing you can do is build anticipation. See, you build that pause in, you get that anticipation. Another great thing, I talk about this a lot. One of the key things I work with people on is helping them move from fear and anxiety with public speaking to a place of confidence. Well, learning how to use pauses strategically and getting comfortable with it will help convey confidence. And so that's a very good skill to have. It's a very good thing to be portraying, especially if you're in leadership positions, you're running a company, you're creating a movement. You want people to feel that you are confident, you have authority in the space that you are working in. Another great thing is creating engagement. The right use of pauses can create more engagement with your listener. And then another really good thing, and this is less about when you are on stage or delivering a presentation or a speech, but more in those day-to-day kind of interactions, those interpersonal skills that come up. But using a pause can really help you gain control or regain control of a conversation. Many times we'll have discussions, and I say discussions, they're not necessarily, hopefully they're not too conflict-ridden, but using a pause when you're in something of a bit of a tense situation can really be helpful as a tool to diffuse that, to regain control. And so another ring. So I think that was 6. Let me know if that wasn't, but that should have been 6 things that top of mind for me are really powerful ways that the pause can be good for you. So how to use pauses effectively. I'm going to go through 5 specific examples here. So one of the key things is before you make a key point is where you can use a pause. So instead of jumping right in, hey, we're going to talk about all these things, it's going to be great, yada, 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 is to use the pause to capture attention. And so I want to give you an example here. So this was in my newsletter and my article. So I'm just going to read this out. This is something with no pauses. So imagine I'm leading a meeting, I'm in this corporate setting, I've got my team around me, and I say the following. Our strategy for next year focuses on innovation, sustainability, and digital transformation, which will define our business approach. doesn't really resonate. You can see I actually just instinctively added a pause in there, which, I was trying to avoid. It's ironic. But so let me read this now. The same thing again, but with the pauses for key emphasis on a point. Our strategy for next year focuses on 3 key things: innovation, sustainability, and digital transformation. Each of these will redefine our business. Now, you tell me, people that are watching in the comments, which one had more drama, had more engagement, created more curiosity and anticipation? I'm going to go with the second one, but you let me know. So yes, using those pauses to create anticipation before you get into your key point or to make key points. Another thing that's really great is when you are looking for that dialogue, that back and forth with your audience, is to use the pause when you are asking a question. Okay, this is really, really important. Many times I see this with leadership. I see this with some of the clients I'm working with, executives, CEOs, founders that are in leadership positions. They tend to ask honestly, in their heart, they're asking the question because they want input from the people that are in the room, from their team. But they end up asking it in a way that feels rhetorical, or they don't allow any space for the answers to come in. And so when I ask the question, what does success look like for us in the next 5 years? And then I immediately start rambling. There's no space there for anyone to jump in. But when I ask that question and I say, what does success look like for us in the next 5 years? And I pause. I scan the room. I look to see what people are thinking. There's this interesting kind of beautiful tension that happens with that pause in that situation, which is that people in the room, especially if it's a smaller group, will fill the pause. We're going to get to that in just a sec, that we do that instinctively when we're speaking, but others will do that too. And so you pose a question, you leave that little bit of pause, and people will naturally try to fill it and start that dialogue. And you just need one, and then it brings this waterfall or avalanche of commentary, which is great if that's what you're trying to create. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, this is a big one. It is all about replacing the filler words with a pause. Now, what are the filler words? You all know what they are, but you may not have heard them referred to as filler words before. So these filler words are the 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 like, or one of the things that's sort of a bit of my weakness occasionally is the or right. And so those are filler words that get in the way of clear, concise, powerful communication. I want you to think about it this way, and I'm sure we've all had this. We're all streaming video services nowadays. And so you're watching something, and as you're watching it, it pauses and it buffers, and then it starts again, and then it pauses and buffers and then starts again. That is essentially what's happening when you are communicating with people and you are filling it up with ums and ahs and likes. It's like that little buffering, and it just messes up the flow and it messes up the impact. And so you want to be very careful of that. I heard this wonderful, big shout out to my friend Thaddeus Gunn, who I used to work with. Great guy, writer, author, very funny individual. But he was, when I posted this newsletter a couple days ago, he commented on it saying that when he was he actually taught a broadcast class, and some of you may have experienced this back in the day. I could say that because I'm 52. But back in the day, there wasn't this sort of empathy and kindness around education in many cases. It was more about ridicule and scorn and making you feel scared. And so he was relaying this story that he would teach this class, and each person in the class had to get up in front of the room, in front of the whole class, and spend 1 minute speaking extemporaneously, just speaking, just telling a story, just recounting something. And they had to avoid saying filler words, like, etc. And if they did, the entire class would then, in unison, shout out, And so imagine that. You already have anxiety about being up in front of the group talking. You're in your head trying to figure out what you're going to say. And you're also thinking, don't use filler words, don't use filler words. So, of course, what do? You use filler words. So, Thaddeus, thank you for that story. I love it. So, you want to be very careful. And we'll talk about how to overcome that if that is something that you tend to do. Now, I touched on this earlier in my list of 6 things, but we'll go a little deeper on this, which is using the pause to diffuse tension. This is great in negotiations. This is great if you're in a bit of a conflict situation to de-escalate the conversation. So, for example, you're interacting with someone, there's a little bit of tension, maybe they're being condescending, maybe they're, criticizing you for something that you've done or said or whatever. So rather than instinctively, we tend to get our hackles up and we get ready to attack and fight back and kind of meet their energy with our opposing energy. Well, instead, what you can do is you hear them out, they say their thing, whether it's one line or a bunch, and then you pause. Let it hang, let it sit there. And then they may have more, so let it come. But the other thing that might happen is when there's that moment and you feel like they're done, you can repeat back to them what they said. So they say, they come at you. Da, 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 da. Pause. And then I repeat back. So really, you think that I'm not pulling my weight on this project? Is that honestly what you think? Pause again. And what'll happen is they will have that moment, because what you've done with them when you said that, you repeated it back and you created those pauses, is it's almost like you're reflecting it back to them now. And so they're feeling it the way it came to you. And so what'll happen is oftentimes they'll hear that and they'll change their tone. They'll say, well, okay, maybe I'm being a little harsh, or maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm just lashing out at you, whatever it is. But the point of it is that you've taken what could have easily become in a split second something where you escalate, they escalate, and then it becomes ugly. You say things that you can't take back. And especially if you're in a corporate setting, it can be really problematic and undermine what you're trying to do, especially if you're in a leadership role. You don't want to get into it in a back and forth in that situation. So pause, de-escalate, repeat back if that feels appropriate, and then they will feel that and it diffuses it, it minimizes the tension. So wonderful way to use the pause, to be aware of it and use it in that type of a situation. It's very powerful. There's lots of negotiation techniques that leverage the pause. All right, so the 5th thing I want to talk about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is how to use the pause for dramatic effect. I think I've shared a few examples just intuitively as I'm speaking of that example, but when it comes to storytellers, when it comes to public speaking, presentations, using the pause for dramatic effect is powerful, powerful stuff. So here is an example. Ready? And in that moment, everything, I'm telling you, everything changed. Okay? You don't even know what I'm talking about or what the context of that everything is, but that pause, that kind of look to the side, that sigh, that created dramatic effect that wouldn't have been there if I just said, in that moment, everything changed. Now you can use that pause between those two, or you can use that pause at the end, but the point is you're using strategic silence. Thank you. My neighbor's dog is chiming in, so thank you for that. All right, so how do we apply these things? I've touched on a bunch of these already in little bits and pieces, but obviously when it comes to public speaking, when it comes to presentations or pitches in front of an audience or a group, that is a place to use the pause. It's a great way to break up dense information. It helps you with your pacing, because I talked about that before, the absorption of information. If you're just rambling on and I'm telling you all about the pauses and I'm not really allowing any space to engage or understand it, then you're going to feel overwhelmed and eventually you're going to check out. Whereas if I am using my pacing, I'm using the pauses to break up information where I say innovation, transformation, great impact. And I use those pauses. It will help people absorb that information and process that information. It will also help create engagement. I think we've seen that here today in the way I'm using these words and using the pauses. Another great place to be leveraging the pause is in leadership situations when you are in that role, you are leading a meeting, you are leading a team, you are rallying support, you are putting forward new initiatives. This is a great place to use the pause. Now, I guess maybe 2 shows ago, I talked about executive presence. And as part of that, strategic pauses were a really important thing in leadership because they really create opportunities for participation, and it really gives your team an opportunity to provide input. Okay, I talked earlier about how when you ask a question, leave that pause so that people will fill it with a response and you can create a dialogue. So very, very, very important in executive presence in terms of leadership. And so the other thing we want to talk about, the last area that you want to be thinking about with this is sales opportunities, sales conversations, because filling that space with a silent moment can be a great tool. Give you an example. This was interesting because one of the things, let me back up. One of the things that happens, especially if we're in negotiation situations, we're a little nervous, we're unsure, we're feeling maybe overmatched by the person we're talking to. Maybe it's our boss or a potential really big client. What'll happen is we get nervous, right? And so just like when you're up on stage and you fill those pauses with filler words, ums, uhs, likes, k's, what happens in negotiation or tense situations is you will tend to want to fill that void and you will be uncomfortable. And so you'll keep talking and rambling, but that's undermining what you're doing, because many times what you can do is almost talk yourself out of that negotiating position on your own. And so using the pause is really, really important. I remember, this is 20 plus years ago now, but the first time I bought a new car from a dealer, and if anyone out there has done that, you go through this rather torturous process if you're not comfortable with it, where you're sitting with the salesperson and you're hashing out the details. And so they say, hey, this car is X amount, blah, blah, blah. And you say, well, I don't know. And you propose a counter offer, what you're willing to pay. Then they go back and talk to the manager in the back, and then they come and give you a number. And then you oftentimes will try and meet that number or split it in half. And then they'll go back and they'll come back and another number. And you keep trying to split it in half. And I remember the sales guy, I really respect him, because in the midst of this, and he could see this sort of consternation, this anxiety on my face, he said to me, you don't have to come up on your number. You can stick with the number you had. And I've always remembered that because it was such an eye-opening moment. Because we naturally, I say I'll pay 1,000. He says, well, it's 2,000. So then I say, well, how about 1,250? And then he goes back and talks to his people and says, no, we can do 1,800. So then I come up, well, how about 1,450? And then they go back and talk, and he's like, well, how about 1,600? And you can see he's coming down, I'm coming up. But what if I just held my position? And he came back and said, what about 1,800? And I said, I'm here at 1,000. That's that's sort of like the pause. I'm holding my position. I'm staking my foot in the ground. And then they come back. So all of that's to say, it's a powerful tool. And so getting comfortable with the pause is really, really important. All right, so how do we get comfortable with this? How do you practice getting better with the pause? Well, there's 5 things. I'm sure there's more, but there's 5 things I'm going to talk about today that I've leveraged, that I leverage with my clients to help them get comfortable with that pause. And I want you to remember that much of what we talk about when it comes to public speaking and communication, whether we're talking about body language or your voice or your gestures or facial expressions, it's all about practicing to the point where it becomes muscle memory and you're starting to bring all these things together. So think about hitting a baseball, okay? Hitting a baseball. The first time you did it as a kid, awkward, trying to figure out, okay, I got to have this, I got to have my shoulders here, I got to swing the bat, I got to look for the ball, there's a lot going on. And so if you're trying to do that all at once while learning it, it's going to be overwhelming. And so you get in that rhythm of you start to figure out, okay, here's where I do this, and you practice and you practice, and then you practice the swing. And communication is exactly the same. So I want you to keep that in mind when I talk about some of these practice techniques, that this is not about doing these all at once, and you're not going to solve it all at once. This is a muscle memory type of a thing. You start to practice, you internalize it, you learn it. All right, so here are the 5 practice things that you can do. The first one, and probably the most valuable one, is record yourself. So get your phone out, set it up. Doesn't have to be studio quality or anything. You just want to be able to hear yourself. And speak extemporaneously. So you could talk about something you did that weekend, or maybe you've got a pitch that you deliver for your business, or maybe you've got an upcoming talk and you can do that opening of that talk. Whatever it is, just spend a minute or so. Record yourself. And then what I want you to do is don't look at what you're doing in the video, but listen to the audio. And listen to what you are doing with your voice. Last time I talked about vocal foundations, we talked about pitch and tone and volume. Well, in this case, I want you to be listening to the words that you are saying and how you are saying them. What are you doing with those empty moments? Are you using ums and likes? Are you filling them with unnecessary? What about your pacing? Are you speaking really quickly and you're overwhelming yourself and you don't know what to do because you're nervous? Even better, I'll back up. If you record yourself while standing in front of a colleague or standing in front of your family, so there's a little bit of that nervous energy. So you are it's more of a real world situation. Okay, you've got that uncomfort, you've got that little bit of anxiety kicking in. And so you will see whether you start to do the ums, the ahs, the filler words. But the point of it is you will be able to hear your speech patterns, your pacing, the volume, the tone, the pitch. You'll also hear whether you're using filler words or not. And what that does is it gives you an opportunity to then work on those. The other thing you can do with that, which is even more powerful, is do that exercise, but then also get a transcript of that piece of conversation. And then you can see it. You can look at it and go, wow, I put an here and I put a like and I put a or that kind of thing. So you start to circle those things. And it's really about becoming aware of the things. We got a plane flying over. It's becoming aware of those things. So that's a really valuable tool. Record yourself, get a transcript. The next thing you can do is, for anyone out there that's a musician, many people have this, it's a metronome. Okay, if you're not sure what that is, look it up, but it just tick, 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 and it will provide an opportunity for you to pace yourself. And so if you are a musician, you know what that is, and you struggle with the pacing of the words that you're saying, it's a valuable thing to just kind of get you in that rhythm, okay? It's like a heartbeat, just tick, 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 tick. And it helps you start to figure out kind of those beats and that rhythm of your conversation. The other thing that's great is when you have that transcript, let's say, is read aloud. It's a great tool to start to see, are you reading where it's just kind of this run-on sentence? I am doing this and it's going to be really great. I'm reading all about it. It's wonderful. It's going to be great. Or are you reading it as though you are saying it out loud? And so reading it back to yourself, or again, getting in front of a group and reciting it. Reciting the written word in your own voice and looking for those pauses. Because remember, this is repetition. This is about practicing. The other thing that's great to do is watch some other speakers that you respect. There's tons of them out there. Go to tedtalk.com, go to Google Talk, get on YouTube, do a search for great movie speeches. There are some amazing speeches out there. And watch what people are doing. How are they pacing? How are they using pauses? How are they using emphasis? A couple I'll throw out there to look at just off the top of my head. Mel Robbins is great. Brene Brown is another good one. Tony Robbins, a couple Robbins in there. Steve Jobs, fabulous speaker. He used pauses. He used anticipation. Another individual, Sir Ken Robinson, he has a couple great TED Talks. He was an educator in the UK, really interesting stuff. You're looking for a fun one? It's probably about 10 years old now, but Philippe Starck, who's a designer from Europe, he has a great TED Talk that's really fun, and he uses some great pauses in there. But like I said, also look for movie speeches that are fabulous. One I will highlight right here. It's from 1954, I think. It's from a movie called The Executive Suite. There's a scene right towards the end of it where the main character just goes off on the rest of the board of directors there, and it's a fabulous, fabulous scene. So watch that. Look at the way he is using pauses, where he is bringing that emphasis to his communication. Another thing, and this is the last point for practicing, is becoming mindful in conversations. Listen to other people as they're talking to you. Really listen. How are they pausing? How are they using this? How are you pausing? Okay, in those conversations. Maybe you go to networking events. This is a great opportunity to practice. Practice those pauses. Ask questions and then wait for the answer. Create that dialogue. Okay, it's muscle memory, muscle memory, muscle memory. You just got to keep going at it. So all of that is to say, pauses are important. Using strategic silence to your advantage in a whole variety of different situations will be a game changer. It will help with your clarity. It will help you connect more deeply, and it will help you convey confidence and authority. So I want you to feel comfortable embracing the pause because it is a valuable, valuable tool. So with that, I want to end and close out today by saying thank you to everyone that tuned in. Thank you for those that jumped in and left some comments. I really appreciate your time and your energy and your focus. If you missed the replay or you want to share this with someone, it is available on LinkedIn and YouTube, so you can watch that, you can get the value. And if you're doing that, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up, leave a comment on what was the most valuable insight you had, or even better, how you took that insight and used it to improve your communication. If you're on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. So what is up for the next communication blueprint? Well, I'm sure we've all been there, listening to a presentation and waiting for the, quote, good part to get to. Now, what if you're the presenter? I want you to think about this as a presenter. What if you could instantly create curiosity, engagement, and a sense of anticipation right from that first sentence? Would that be a game changer for your presentation? I suspect it would be. So I want you to tune in to our next communication blueprint when we are going to be talking about how to craft an engaging introduction to hook your audience right from the start. So with that, I will say thanks again, everyone. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy and attention. And I want you to remember, don't just speak, inspire. All right, my friends, we'll see you next time. Cheers.
"20 seconds till you're on."
You're going to screw this up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Why do you even bother? You are going to absolutely look like an idiot.
You got this.